Has your business ever been impacted by regulations or legislations that just don't make sense in the context of your business? I know I've experienced that as an environmental engineer, and our guest today is going to tell you something that you probably had no idea was even something to even consider, because I sure didn't before this. Welcome to another episode of The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Business. I'm your host, Catryn Becker, and on this podcast, we talk to all sorts of different successful people because we want to learn what they've learned in their careers and lives that have made them so successful. Because we know that behind every success, there's a mountain of failures, of learnings, of wrong turns, of dead ends. But we learn from each one of those, and it helps us to move faster, farther. So my guest today is a senior health advocate, and she is doing amazing things for the seniors community. And if you're not a senior yourself, or if you've got aging parents, you definitely want to listen to this because there's some things in there that you might not realize is happening, and there's things that you can do about it. So Linda McDougall, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Catryn.
It's all good. It is all good. So, Linda, you are a senior health advocate and you are a senior yourself, and you have been really doing a lot for your community. Tell us a little bit about what it is that you do for your community.
Well, I do senior massage for one thing, and I'm a specialized massage therapist for them and the disabled. But right now I'm doing more advocacy and partnering and just strange things like that to get things going, because there's so much that the public needs to know about senior care that they don't. And also a lot that the legislative bodies need to address in the senior health space. What I'm trying to do right now is get some legislation started to make the licensing of these places more responsible for their own choices for other people, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah. Well, and how did you even get into senior care? Is it something that you did even in your younger days, or is it something that became more important for you as you were aging?
My younger days were spent with the developmentally disabled. And as I started becoming a senior, it was a natural evolution because they have some of the same meds, some of the same devices, things like that. So it was a natural evolution for me. And the seniors don't have that many advocates. So
sadly,
people love kids, so they go to kids.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those things that, like, I have two children, and people could have told me till they were blue in the face what it's like to have kids, what it's like to be pregnant, what it's like to give birth. But I could never fully appreciate what they were telling me until I experienced it myself. And then it was like, oh, this is what they were talking about. I get it now. And I'm sure that must be part of the situation here as well. Like, you don't know until you know.
One of the things I've been trying to do, but haven't gotten anywhere with yet, is to get into the senior homes as just an extra pair of educated eyes. Because I find that when I go to do massages or presentations in those places, I get people asking questions or telling me things that they're not telling the institution itself so they could fix. So that causes me to pause and go, I wonder what they don't know.
Right.
And I'll give you an example because it was so bizarre to me, and I've seen similar things since. But I gave a presentation at one of the local places years ago. This was quite a few years ago. And toward the end, this little lady comes up to me and she goes, "Can you come up to my room after you're through?" I said, "Sure." So I finished answering people's questions, and then I went upstairs with her. Here's this diminutive woman, elderly, and she's got a pedestal bed. this woman was small enough, she could barely get a purchase on the bed with her little butt to get on the bed.
Mm.
And she was almost falling on her head doing so. She had to bend so far down just to get the buttocks up enough to
Get it high
on.
enough. Yeah.
It was just ridiculous. And then when she got a little bit of purchase, she would throw her legs over onto the bed. Literally throw them.
Wow.
And then she would claw her way into the center of the bed.
Every day she had to do that.
Yeah. And nobody had recognized any problem. Nobody had done anything about it. And I don't even know why they even let that move in with her.
Mm.
I mean, that should have been all these things. I see a lot of furniture problems, and this was one of them. And people don't think when they're setting up the room or whatever, and seeing things come in that don't belong, and with a senior. And I just felt so sorry for that lady.
Yeah.
Down and told the management immediately, of course, but I don't know what happened because I'm not there. It wasn't.
Whoever she is, I hope she got a bed that suits her.
We just cut the pedestal off, put it down. I mean, my bed is on the floor. I have 2 mattresses on the floor. It makes me use my legs to get up in the morning.
Mm.
Which is fine. I need to do that. So that's one way to make sure I continue to do that.
Mm.
But I certainly wouldn't have it too high like that.
Yeah, I mean, seems like a fall hazard for sure.
Oh, I was just waiting for her to fall on her head.
Poor thing.
So yeah.
You had sent me earlier today an email, which I read, and then after reading it, said, I have no idea what I read. This makes absolutely no sense. So I'm just going to give a brief overview to the listeners. And it's basically the problem that you are trying to overcome is that there are laws and regulations forbidding seniors from wearing restraint devices, even seatbelts. Please walk us through what on earth could possibly be the logic for having this kind of regulation, because it makes no sense to me.
That's why I've put it into the Area Agency on Aging for legislative work. Years ago, back in the last century, there was a lot of abuse and restraint. And so they came in with the Nursing Home Reform Act and Title 22 in the federal rules.
So let me just interrupt you. I'm so sorry, Linda, but just to understand, so elders were being physically restrained,
yes,
maybe against their will?
Yes, medically and physically. They get, and it wasn't just seniors, because I worked in the state hospital, the mental state hospital, and they did that as well, because once they took them off of the meds, and there was a law then that came in while I was working at the Camarillo State Hospital, all of a sudden they were taking them off because this new law required them to have just enough medication to work, but not to make them zombies, right?
Right. Mm.
So, but they took them off in order to find this step that they needed for minimum, restraint.
Which takes a lot of time to figure out what that right dosage is. Like that is not an easy process.
Took a lot of crazy people like me having to become, trying to restrain people that were then off of their meds.
Yeah.
And in fact, hurting themselves and others until they could figure out the right dose. So these laws came in last century, and they were meant to just make it so you had minimal medication that would do the job, but not make them zombies.
Mm-hmm.
Minimum restraints and more safety things like seatbelts and such. However, as time has gone by, if you go into almost any senior home, you're not going to see seat belts. You're not going to see postural supports. And so these people are slumped in their wheelchairs.
Mm-hmm. I think we can all conjure up a mental image of that.
Yes. And you have to realize what that's doing to the person. Most people of age are having their spine deteriorate from osteoporosis, and it deteriorates from the front. So the front part starts collapsing. And so you're doing this naturally to begin with. But then if you have no supports, postural supports to keep you upright, you begin to lose your ability to breathe well, to eat well. Your organs are all getting smashed together. So their functioning is bad.
I feel like I'm like sitting up straighter and having better posture just listening to this. I mean, that makes so much sense, but I think we probably take for granted, you know, in our youth, as my mom is so fond of saying, the youth is wasted on the young. That we take for granted that our spine keeps us upright and we have muscles to keep our posture and our abs and all of that stuff. And that gets weaker as we age.
It gets weaker as we age. We grow a lot more scar tissue in our bodies as we age. And that alone will kill us in the end, because it ends up going into all the systems and shutting down gradually. So you're not helping people by letting them be like this. You know, if you can't breathe fully, if you can't, I've seen people literally with their chin on their chest being fed. Their head is that far down.
Oh, and they don't have the neck muscles necessary. And
there are, I also ran 2 group homes for United Cerebral Palsy's adults years ago. And these people could get, and they are under the same rules, mind you, the Title 22, and they could get everything they needed from head to toe.
Wow.
Seniors can't. Now, why is that when they're under the same rules and regulations?
That makes no sense. So, and just to help everyone following along, because it is a bit madness, is there were restraint laws that were then overused. So then, of course, the pendulum swung back the other way and said, okay, no restraints. Restraints are bad. So now we're living
safety devices. Safety devices are restraints and bad.
So now we're living in a land where there are regulations currently existing prohibiting the use of
the regulations do not prohibit it. They want a middle road. It is the licensing that has gone overboard. And let me explain some reasons for that.
Please.
The homes are supposed to have records from doctors that say, Alice over here needs to have a seatbelt, needs to have this kind of a device. And the doctors are now run by insurance companies. They have like 15 minutes with you.
Yeah.
I asked my own doctor, which no longer is my own doctor because he answered this way. But I asked him, I said, how come we have the same people out in your waiting room and I never see a change in any kind of device or any kind of anything with them, and they obviously need it. He goes, well, I don't have 2 hours to do an assessment. And I leaned across at him and I said, do you have 5 minutes to do a referral to someone who does have the time?
Yeah.
Because those are supposed to be PTs and OTs, physical therapists and occupational therapists that can do those assessments. And they're not being referred now in many cases to the people who can do the assessment, who can add to the documentation for the seniors of what they really need. And if it's backed up enough in the home, in the medical charts, licensing can't do that.
What a quagmire.
Yes. And it's made up of well-meaning people that just are caught in a system that's not functional right now.
Yeah, well, that can probably be said for a lot of our systems.
Yes, it is. It is. But it's maddening. It really is, because it's killing our seniors, literally.
Yeah.
Okay. 50,000 people a year. Now, this isn't all seniors, but 50,000 people a year end up in the emergency room due to mobility device misuse and tripping and falling over them and everything else. You've got to buy them correctly. You've got to use them correctly, and you've got to adjust them correctly for the person. And I see all of that wrong everywhere, practically.
So if someone goes to buy a device at a store that I would assume specializes in that kind of thing, they aren't fitted for it there?
Some places will, some places won't. Some places, like I mentioned to you earlier, sent my 6-foot-tall female client out with a 5'4" walker. So, wow. It depends. And that's why people need to be educated and actually learn a little bit about how to size things for themselves, how to, and how to ask the right questions.
Do you see any difference in men or women, depending on like seniors who advocate for themselves more? Is there any gender issue there, or is it more personality dependent than that?
I think it's more personality, but there aren't that many that know enough to advocate for themselves. At least not in this little area that I've carved out for me. Because most people don't even realize that that's happening. Yeah. Much less seniors. So it's just been my little mission on earth while I'm still here to bring this to people's awareness, because they aren't aware. They see all the misuse of these devices and they think it's normal. Mm-hmm. They think we're supposed to be like this.
That's such a good point of thinking this is how it's supposed to be, and never actually challenging, okay, but is it the right thing?
And why can't it be different?
Yeah.
And it can be. As I told you before we started, I'm 76. I just turned 76 last month.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And I'm still upright. I take care of my bones. And that's very important for you younger folks, to take care of your bones, because you don't want to end up crumbled like this. Mm-hmm. Because that just has you leaving the planet earlier and being less able to do the things you want to do earlier.
Something that is coming to mind as we're talking through this is, it feels like in other societies, maybe outside of the US, maybe earlier in the US's history, that elders were given so much respect, right? Of the wisdom of their life experience, what they can share to the youngers. And it seems now like boomer has almost become like a negative term, like, oh, boomer, you don't know.
It has become a negative term. I had somebody put that on one of my threads and I just went, boomer might. Yes, I may be a boomer, but I'm brighter than you are. I wouldn't be putting that on a boomer site.
But there is some sort of disconnect there. And it seems like, unless it's, the children of the seniors maybe moving forward for them, or I don't even know. I mean, what are your thoughts on solutions for this, on how to get this out more? Because you're just one person.
I'm just one person. Oh, that's why I'm trying to do legislation, because that's the only way it's going to really get out. But it's hard to even get that, Yeah. So I just keep trying to do podcasts, and I've written my book. But although the book doesn't have the legislation piece in it. It has the mobility devices and things like that in it. But
Well, tell us a little bit more about the book and where people can get it, because maybe that's a really good starting point for
it's a starting point. Yeah. It's well, I have it over here. Wait just half a moment.
And I've got the title, so I can say the title while you grab it. Oh, you got it. There we go.
Yep.
It's The Spirit Method of Massage for Seniors, Raising the Bar.
And then it's a primer for massage therapists and caregivers. Because as I was writing it, I realized even though I was writing it for massage therapists, and some chapters are really for massage therapists, there was so much in it that caregivers could use.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm also a holistic health practitioner, among many other things. So I do a lot of holistic health things. I just had a friend of mine ask me to do a check on her blood panel that she had done, because there were several things that were high, but the doctor hadn't bothered to tell her anything about them. So I said, okay, let me take it home and let me go see what I see, and then I'll come back and tell you. Well, everything was leading to either a problem with the liver or a problem with the kidneys. And she also had an extremely high vitamin B12 level.
Oh.
And so I went back to her and she goes, oh, well, I've got stage 3 kidney failure. I went, well, you could have told me that.
That seems relevant to this discussion.
And so I said, well, the knees make sense. And I said, I don't know about the B12 thing. And so I went back and started looking it up. And she had been taking the cheaper version of B12, which is not what you should be taking. It's the cyanocobalamin, and the cyano is cyanide.
Same derivative.
And I don't know why they put cyanide in a B12, because it's a poison. But for most people, they'll wash it out because it's a minor piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
But with somebody with kidney failure,
That's a big deal.
it's a big deal because they're stacking it up.
Yeah.
So they're poisoning themselves. So I had given her a spray B12 because I wanted her to have the methyl, not the cyano, methylcobalamin, because you have methyl pathways in the body.
Mm-hmm.
So the methyl goes straight into those pathways. You don't have to worry about breaking it down. Seniors don't break down things as well as younger people. So you want things that go straight in if you can get them, and sprays are one of those things.
Isn't it crazy, like the things that we think we're doing that are for our health? You know, she obviously was taking B12 for, more energy and all the wonderful things that B12 does, and thinks she's doing the right thing, and yet it was hurting her.
Yep, and I'm afraid a lot of people do that because they don't ask.
Yeah.
Until they're sick, like this lady was, and then she's asking me about things. And I'm going, oh my goodness, okay. So I told her, your B is so high, let's just go off of it for a little bit and see if we can get it back down to a semi-normal level, because you're obviously not flushing a lot of things out of your system with the kidney failure problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the B levels are supposed to be up to about 900, and she was at 1900 and something.
Whoa.
Yes, whoa.
That's a lot.
And normally seniors will have less B12 unless they're taking doses.
Mm.
So that was interesting too. I had never seen a value that high. So I just went, oh my goodness. Now I'm not a doctor, okay? I'm not a doctor. So I told her that. I said, I'm not a doctor, but
Yeah, not a doctor, not accepting that responsibility and liability.
no.
Something to talk about with your doctor.
But he or she had not even talked to her about that.
Mm.
That's why she brought it to me. And that's kind of what happens in my life. It's people whose doctors are not are not talking to them.
It is hard. I mean, I went in this year for a physical, had my, blood work drawn, and it all came back within range, but I was having some other issues. And again, you only see the primary care for 5 minutes if I'm lucky. And when I get the report back, it talks about all these things that we allegedly talked about. And I'm like, they didn't ask me how I'm sleeping. They didn't ask me about stress. Like, just how you doing? I'm okay. And then that's as far as it goes. And yeah, it's unfortunate that doctors don't have that luxury of time, because it is such an important piece of this puzzle to really dig in and understand.
There is a movement for it among doctors to get back to private practice, but I don't know how they're going to do that and have people afford them without insurance. And the insurance is what's making them do 15-minute appointments at tops,
Yeah, what drives it. Oh, so this has been so eye-opening and really makes me think, I need to reach out to, my family members and definitely have them direct you to your book. But the kind of last question I want to ask before we wrap up is just around massage in general and the importance of massage. And I remember hearing at some point that we know how important touch is as humans, and that's something that seniors can really be missing as they're older, being in homes, that there's not the physical touch happening.
Or it's more custodial touch.
Exactly. It's not necessarily that sort of caring. So can you just talk a little bit about the difference, well, just the importance of massage, period, and just kind of some of the differences that maybe are in your book that people should be aware of?
Massage in general. Well, it obviously gets the blood flowing. And that's really important, especially in older people, because again, I talked about the scar tissue buildup. It also builds up in the blood vessels. So it's harder. You got little old ladies and little old men with cold hands and cold feet, because those blood vessels are scarring up inside and blocking the blood flow. So that's something that massage can do. It can break up the tissues, a little scar tissues that are growing, and get the hands a little bit warmer. I take systemic enzymes, and systemic enzymes also eat up the scar tissue, excess scar tissue in the body. So I have pretty warm hands and feet usually. But yeah, massage can do so many things. I have a lady here that I work on that she was having trouble turning her leg. She was in one of our exercise classes, and she goes, I can do almost everything, but I can't do this. So I said, okay, let me see what I can see. And right on the inside of her leg, next to the ankle, there was a big lump. And so I started working on that lump, and pretty soon she could turn her foot out. That was what she couldn't do, was turn her foot outwards.
Interesting.
So we worked on that for a couple of sessions just to make sure it stuck. And it didn't go back to going.
Right.
But that's the kind of thing you're trying to, and one of the things I try to do is, because seniors round, and if it's
I'm like doing shoulder rolls.
and you're doing them the correct direction, especially for seniors, you want to do backwards, not necessarily forwards, because you're forward all the time.
Yeah.
So you want to do the backwards. But yeah, I try to open up the chest area. So I go down on the muscles in the back and up on the spine in the back, because the spine, I don't have a pretty picture of a spine right here, but the spine is little chunk on little chunk on little chunk. So we round like this, but if you go up the spine, right at the spine, you can start closing some of those places that open when you round. They're supposed to be up.
Okay. Yeah, that makes complete sense. And now I really want a massage. Well, I mean, you're 76 years old and you're still giving massages. How long do you think you can go? How long do you want to go?
I love doing it. My problem is that the pandemic shut me down for years
Yeah.
because I was a senior, my clients were seniors. Everything changed after the pandemic for me. I had to start networking all over again.
Mm.
And I was going at 70 something, I've got to start all over again. I was thinking, geez. But almost everybody had died, left, changed jobs, done whatever. And so all of my networking people, almost all of them, were gone. And that was really, I'm just now, and I mean right now, beginning to see a tiny increase.
Mm.
I mean, I've had 1 or 2 clients all this time, just 1 or 2. And now I've got like 4. I'm going, whoa.
This is wonderful.
But the thing is, because I haven't done it in so long, I'm glad it's going slowly in a way because it gives me time to adjust again and get stronger again before I wipe myself out. Because one good massage could wipe me out for a while. I come home and sleep,
Yeah, I don't think people really appreciate how physically demanding giving a massage can be.
And it is. And I just love it. I mean, people who love me doing it for them are people who really want to have things like, okay, my leg needs to go out, my foot needs to go out. That person absolutely loves me, and she loves the fact that I got her leg going again.
I bet. I mean, you're giving people back life.
Well, another thing besides the opening up of the chest and trying to close the back, those kind of things, I also do a lot of work on the feet and the legs because you've got seniors go around in slippers, flat slippers, and that really takes them. Most of them do not need to be in flat anythings. They need foot supports.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other thing I've been trying to get through to people because like I'm naturally flat-footed to a degree. I don't look like it if my feet are in the air, but if I stand on them, yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah.
And during the pandemic, I went barefoot in my house for almost a year before my feet started screaming at me going, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Help us. So I went and got some orthopedic slippers and I have them to this day and I love them because I can walk around in slippers that are orthopedic and I don't have my feet yelling at me.
I mean, I know for me, changing to having more arch support in all of my shoes has made a world of difference for my knees and my hips.
Yes. Well, it's all connected.
They're all connected.
Everything comes from the feet.
Mm.
And if they aren't supported, your knees go out of balance, your hips go out of balance all the way up. Because one thing depends on the other thing being right. And it's just all the way up the body.
Which is so true for our relationships, for our businesses, for everything. I mean, we are all within one and one within all. So, Linda, I have so enjoyed this conversation. It's been so eye-opening, and my mind is already racing on, who do I need to share this with? Who needs to hear this? So thank you so much for, following your heart to live this passion of yours.
It hasn't made me rich, but at least it's made me happy.
Hey, success is not always measured by numbers and cents.
No, it isn't, but I wish it were to a degree.
Isn't it great when it's both? So Linda, please share with everyone how they can get in touch with you and work with you and your area, can't speak, geographical area.
I'm in Ventura County, just above LA County in California. I have a website, loveyourlongevity.com. and you can reach me through the website. The book is on the website as well, as are several other podcasts, some of my older and earlier ones. I need a VA to put up the other ones. But right now, not so much. Or you can just email me, arthritiscoach@gmail.com.
I love that. I will have all of that information linked in the show notes of this episode, but I always love for the audio listeners when we can give it to them both ways.
Oh, and another thing I do that you might want to know about is I have a thing called Nutrient Thieves in Your Medicine Cabinet. And I can take your medications and tell you what is being taken out nutrition-wise so that you can replace it properly.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Most people don't do that either.
No, oh, that could be a whole separate episode, because yeah, that is definitely something that needs to be more talked about and people to understand.
Well, we can do that too.
Well, Linda McDougall, thank you so much for being a guest on here. I really enjoyed spending this time together.
Me too. Thank you so much.
And to the listeners, thank you so much for being here. We always appreciate your support. If you've enjoyed this episode, please make sure to like, share, subscribe, do all of the things that you know to do. Share this with someone who might not be aware of this and needs to know about it. And take a lesson from Linda that you can make change, no matter how small, no matter where you are, just by being you. Until next time, everyone, take care.